Hello, everyone, and welcome to another conversation with one of the authors from Dance Adventures, True Stories About Dancing Abroad. And I'm here today with Helen Tocci, who wrote an incredible story called The Weight of the Rain about Senegal. Thank you so much for being here, Helen.
I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. And you were just saying before this call that we've never met in person, but we've gotten to become friends through the process of writing this story, which is bonkers.
That's, I feel like, for me, one of the big blessings of being involved in this project is getting to become friends with you.
Oh, yay. I
Really
love
a
that.
fun way and a way that I've never become friends with someone through like going into a creative process together and then having an editor, which I've never had before. So yeah, it was really, really interesting and fun and a beautiful way to get to know someone, and quite vulnerable, which I think speaks to you and your particular gifts.
Well, thank you. And I'm excited because we're going to have you read a bit from your story today. And I'm going to ask you a ton of questions about your story because it was so fascinating and I learned so much. Um, is there anything in particular that you really want me to ask you in this interview before I give you my questions?
Well, I feel like one gift for me of writing this story,
Mhm.
being asked to write this story and to think back on this time is that it's really made me think about my practice. I'm a dancer and a dance teacher, and um, it has really helped me to kind of solidify kind of my mission in my work, in dance, and then kind of in all other parts of my life, which is around like um, having a healthy relationship with your body. And I feel like this story really speaks to that. So yeah, I've just been thinking a lot about that, like how formative this experience was
Hmm.
for me in developing a healthy relationship with my body. Like, I don't know if I would have been able to develop the relationship that I have now had I not had this experience. So it's really made me think a lot about that and kind of how that has infused all of the work that I've done in the world. So that's really exciting to me.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about your mission. Like, what do you do and what's the mission behind it?
Well, I'm a dance educator, and I'm starting to branch off into thinking about how I can um, use my embodied practice to bring an embodied practice and a healthy relationship with your body to more people beyond like my dance students, because it's such an interesting thing when my dance students reflect to me. I've been teaching for a long time, 20 years in New York City.
Wow.
um, and when they reflect back to me what they love about my teaching and what was impactful to them, I mean, sometimes they might be like, I can do a really great turn now, but most of the time they're like, I really have learned to trust myself. I've learned to love myself. I've learned to make choices and stand behind them. And I really feel your love and support of me. And I feel like I'm able to do that because of the love and support that I've received. Um, so yeah, I'm in this process right now of like trying to find a way to share what I do with like kind of a small amount of teenagers with a larger group of people, because when I think about the healing that's needed in the world right now, a lot of it has to do with relationship in general and relationships with our own bodies, and particularly for white people, having a really grounded and healthy relationship with our bodies so that then we can be in right relationship in the world.
Mm.
So
I
yeah, I'm
love
in the process right now. It's a very exciting time. And actually, Megan, like really the process of writing the story kind of set it in motion
that.
of wondering how I can make a larger impact in that way, because I see a need.
Yeah, I love that. I can't wait to see what you produce. I'm really curious and I kind of want to spend the whole interview talking about that. Do you have a sense of what it might be? Like a little.
Well, in
Sure.
non-COVID times, it would probably take the form of workshops.
Hmm.
But I think that I've been doing a lot of writing again, like super
Yay.
inspired by having this process and working with an editor. I've been doing a lot of writing and thinking about like ways I could share like online, maybe an online course, and maybe some group coaching.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, it's like all taking shape right now. So it's exciting.
I
Yeah.
love that. I love that. I can relate because one thing that dance is giving me, in particular, dance in West Africa and then also dance in the DR, is this better relationship with my body too. And this questioning of some of the things that have been conditioned within me that I hadn't even noticed, which you also talk about. So maybe could you share with us just a little bit more about what your story is about and that journey of learning to relate to your body in a new way?
Yeah. Well, so before I went to Senegal, so this was a story from a long time ago. I went to Senegal when I was in college, in my junior year of college, and um, I don't talk about this in my story, but I think this is an interesting uh, forward, which is that I had just gone through this intense experience where, I you can't see it in this photo, but I have a voluptuous body, and particularly in the time when I went to college, like I think that there's big strides in kind of awareness around bodies and awareness around kind of the conditioning that we've had, like really unhealthy conditioning we've had culturally in the United States around our bodies, and kind of what body is appropriate. And that I think is particularly magnified in dance, which is so in the United States, so led by ballet and Western forms. Again, I feel like this is shifting, and that's really exciting to me. But I grew up only doing ballet because that's what was available to me. And I do want to say that I had an amazing ballet teacher. Her name is Kathleen McCluskey Scott, and she worked with the American Ballet Theater and then moved up to Northern Vermont. And so she's a beautiful teacher. However, in that form, my body was not there was always something to be uh, uh, like you wanted to be like the light, airy sugar plum fairy, and I was like, you know, I have big hips, and especially I was learning ballet as I was developing. So I had always been kind of in this place where I knew I wanted to be a dancer. I knew it was in me. People saw the joy and the love of the dance and
Mm.
the way I connected. And what I think it is connecting to spirit. But you see that. However, there was constantly this kind of like, well, she can't be in the like highest level ballet class because of her body, or she can't do this. So right before I went to Senegal, I had applied for a program in London, and they had written to my teacher who had recommended me and been like, well, we are not going to accept her to this program because we're concerned that she will hurt herself because of her weight. So I was not, they were
Wow.
like, she's a beautiful dancer, but she would need to lose weight in order to get into our program. And I mean, I went to Connecticut College and I had amazing teachers, and they were like, whatever, that's ridiculous. So I was kind of going through this period of being like, can I be a dancer? Is like okay for me to be a dancer? Will I be able to make a living that way? I was going through this really challenging period, and I was given money, a grant, and to study, and I was like, I want to go to Africa and study someplace that has a movement that's completely different. And I had been really inspired by some of the work that I had done in college. So I went on this trip kind of coming from a place of really feeling kind of sad about the dance world and unsure about myself as a dancer. So my experience in Senegal of really being surrounded by people, and this was my experience. I don't know if it's everyone's experience, but my experience was that literally every single person I met danced. And no one was like, oh, you have to be this way to dance, or you have to be this way. It's like you breathe, you dance. This is what we do. It's like you're Italian, you eat. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So for me to be in that environment where people just danced because to live, it was like dancing was living, was transformative for me and how I felt about myself and my permission to be fully in my body and to
Mm.
dance.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. Um, and I'm loving this backstory too. I had no idea that going into this, I mean, we get a little bit of that in the story, right? You talk a little bit about your childhood growing up in Vermont, learning ballet, understanding that you were being is pigeonholed the right word? Like based on the roles that you were getting.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I love them. But
yeah.
I always kind of wanted to be like the sugar plum fairy, and they were like, "You're going to be the evil queen,"
Yeah,
or
I
the
know.
wolf and Peter and the Wolf, which was great because it's very dramatic, so fun. And I knew partly that it wasn't just because I was like good at being dramatic; it was because like my body didn't fit into what the ideal of a sugar plum fairy would be. And
Hmm.
I'm hoping, like, I want to be a part of what changes that.
Yeah.
Like all of our bodies can do whatever we like is in our spirit to express.
Yeah.
um yeah.
I love that. And so getting more of the backstory, I just realized how I knew this trip was healing for you because the way you write about it is so beautiful in the book. But now I'm getting just how, like, what a vulnerable moment this was for you, having just been told you might hurt yourself dancing, so you can't dance. And then going to this country where, I study Guinea dance. I know there's some crossover in Senegal and probably a lot of unique things, but Lord knows it is athletic, right? Like, and if you can do that dance and not hurt yourself, like, it seems
Well, I mean, it was total, I don't know if I can say this on the, it was bullshit,
it was
it's
bullshit. Yeah, that's
bullshit. And it's about like
right.
antiquated ideas of like what our bodies should be, and really, I mean, racist ideas of what our bodies should be. um Ideas that are based on like white men's bodies.
Yeah.
And I think it's so interesting that like that system has really harmed so many people, and I mean me the least. I come from so much privilege.
Mm.
But I really, it's just my prayer. I think that there are strides happening right now.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. What are
that
the
we can overcome that.
Mhm. Yeah, and so take us into your very first days in Senegal and tell us what that was like for you, having arrived in this place where it seemed like everyone was dancing and dance was like breathing.
I mean, I felt scared a little bit. I felt scared about my own desire. I mean, this is something that I do in my work too, like with my students, like not being afraid of your own desires, trusting your own desires. Because I think that's another way that we're often told, um, to not follow that your desires are not okay. I saw that and I was like, oh, I want that. And then I was like, oh, well, what about if I'm not perfect? Or what about if I don't do it right? Or what about if I step on someone's toe? Or what if I take up too much space? Or, there was so much going on. So I think that, and they had been told, I was traveling with this amazing group. I do want to mention them, called Intercultural Dimensions.
Mhm.
Janet and John, Janet Gaddis and John Hand run this amazing program, and they take people from many walks of life. Like I was a dancer, and there was a doctor with us, there was a school teacher with us, and they create a program where we can travel and kind of do exchanges. And so the places that we would go, people knew that I was a dancer, so they would expect me to just like come out and dance. And meanwhile, I was like, I have to be perfect. I have to dance,
First
you know?
position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was this kind of unveiling process of, and there was just like this invitation without any expectation. There was just an invitation, like, why wouldn't you dance? We all just dance. That's what we do. And so, I kind of was like this, like little bits, like I would like do a little ballet dance. They'd be like, that's cool. But little by little, I learned how to really show myself, because that was also, it was like this process of being brave enough to show myself, particularly in improvisation. Now I'm an improviser. That's what I do. I do mostly improvisation now, which is I talk with my little ones, making it up in the moment versus planning it out ahead of time. Now I'm mostly an improviser. I do a practice called contact improvisation. But at that time, I didn't really know how to improvise. So to trust myself, to be in the moment, create in the moment without planning it ahead of time, let it be as it is, and then allow other people to see me. That was a big thing. But that was just like my experience. What I saw is that that's just how people did. It was like an expression of their joy. It was being together. It was a connection to the music, a connection to the land.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
you really got dropped in this culture that had a completely different relationship to self-expression and movement than the one that you were raised in, and it got
And
to
again,
rub off
oh, I
on
just
you.
want to say, like, that was my experience seeing that. I'm not making broad
Sure,
generalizations about
sure.
culture, but that was my experience where I was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that the people that you were with had a very different relationship to self-expression, movement, dancing, and probably a lot of other things, and that it sounds like it got to rub off on you, or you at least got to call into question some of the ways that you were being with them. Is that accurate?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, it
cool.
was incredibly inspiring and really, I mean, scary. I remember like sitting and watching everyone dance and knowing they would like expect me to come dance with them, and my heart would be like, "Ah." I was like, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I'll do it right. So one of the best gifts, one of the most amazing gifts for me was kind of little by little letting go of that idea that I have to be perfect in order to share myself with someone else.
Mm,
I mean, kind of at its core, and that uh, like it has to be planned out ahead of time. That I
mm,
could just like show up and offer what I have, and that's it. Like there's no, it doesn't even necessarily have to be judged. It's like if that's my offering. So that's what I teach my students now. They're creating, and it's the creation that's the important part.
mm.
Not whether I judge it to be good or not. It's how fully you are in it and invested in it and committed.
Gorgeous. Well, I'm going to pull up a map of Senegal quickly because I didn't know a few things about geography in Senegal, and you guys get to see my terrifying amount of tabs at this moment. Why won't this share? Share, share. There we go. So here is Senegal. I wonder if I can even get this bigger. I can. And, I didn't realize this, but the Gambia goes right through Senegal. And so you started off, you landed in Dakar over here, correct?
Yep. And we traveled all around
Mhm.
in the kind of northern and central part of Senegal. So I traveled with a group, and then we crossed the Gambian border, and went down into the Casamance, which I don't know if I can see
Right
it on
here.
there. Yeah, into the Casamance to a town called Sedu, and that's where and then I stayed there and lived there for a while,
Mm.
with friends of Janet and John, who
And, it,
welcomed me into their home.
and it's pretty cool that Sedu's on this map. So you can see how it sits right on the river here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wild. And so, how did that part of the country or that village feel distinctly different to you than the other places that you visited?
Hmm. Well, it's much more lush in the Casamance region.
Mhm.
And it's different. I actually don't know a lot about the history of Senegal, so I don't want to speak too much to it. But definitely there's like the uh, Dakar. There's like tribal things that are, like certain tribes live in the lower area, and so there's been actually a lot of right after I left. It got there. There's a lot of warring that has happened in the Casamance, which is quite sad.
Mm.
But it's a much more like jungly area, and it's a little more arid further north. I also traveled along the coast, which is super super beautiful. Um, but that was the main, at least topographical difference. That
Yeah.
um, in the north it's much more arid and it's much more jungly in the south.
Yeah.
And the town where I lived, most people were farmers. Like they would go and uh, work in the fields. Like the family that I lived. That's how they made a living and how they supported their family. So I think
Mm.
most people were like farmers or merchants.
Yeah. And how long were you down in the Casamance? How much time you spent there?
2 months. I
Mhm.
don't quite remember.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think it was 2 months. I think I traveled for a month and then for 2 months lived with Deju and his family.
Hmm. And so that was your first experience in Senegal, actually living with a family. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yes.
And maybe just share with us, like, one or two memories that you really cherished about your time with them, if you would.
I don't know. I really like, it'll make me cry a little bit. The generosity with which they invited me into their home, it was so different, their lifestyle, from anything I had known. But they were so generous and so, uh, the way I experienced the way they lived, it was such like there was an honesty and a real like love for each other and a connection to the greater community. And it was so impactful for me. And actually, when I think about it, like there is a connection for my ancestry. Like there was a feeling, a similar feeling in the way that the family felt,
Mm,
to my family, particularly on my mother's side, who are farmers in Vermont. And there was a similar sort of feeling,
mm,
um, of uh, just like family love and kind of, I don't know, it sounds cliche as I'm talking about it, but I really mean this like in the sweetest way, like the like kind of simplicity, just like clearly knowing the work that they were doing, and everyone in the house had a role, and
mm.
people did it and loved each other and enjoyed their lives. That,
Yeah,
and again, that was what I was seeing. So I want to say that it's like my perspective. So this is not necessarily true, but this is what I saw. um
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
That's how it felt to you. Um, One of my favorite moments from your story is when you went to go study the balafon with your teacher. Was his name Manet? Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Manet.
Monsieur. Yes.
Your Monet. Manet. And you arrive, and there's a bit of a surprise that you have. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Well, and actually, so I was writing the story, and I really like got really excited about writing this part. And Megan, being like the good editor that she is, was like, "Helen, you can't." And I was like, "No, I really need to. I need to describe all these things." And Megan was like, "No, the story is going to be too long." Um, yeah, I mean, I was really nervous, and Deju, Aliun Deju, who was the father of the family that I stayed with and became a dear friend, brought me there, and it was like very formal because this person was extremely well respected in the town. Like they had basically, it was really beautiful. I think the way that they decided, like Aliun kind of let people know in the town that I was coming and that I wanted to study dance and music, and everyone was like, "Well, who's the best at these things?" And they just kind of were like, "They'll teach her," And I assumed that they like volunteered as well. Um, so I went to his house, and he only spoke Balant, which I did not speak. I spoke like a little bit of Mendika and a little bit of Jola, because Aliun's family is Jola, or Deju's family is Jola. So we couldn't talk at all. And he didn't speak French, and he definitely didn't speak English. So I arrive, and I'm like getting ready. I'm getting ready. I was introduced, and then we had tea, because you always had tea, and it took a while. And I was kind of just quiet while they talked. And then I expected that we would go, and he would like introduce me to the balafon, and we would start playing. But instead, he like handed me a hatchet and was like, "Follow me," by going like this. And so we went to his backyard, and he was like, "This is the tree we're gonna cut down to like cut out the
Keith.
notes for
Yeah.
the instrument that we're going to create together." So it was a long time before I actually learned how to play the balafon, because we crafted it together. It was
Hmm.
super amazing. Um,
So so amazing. And I didn't we got
all of the materials came from his backyard. So a tree, and then the gourds he grew in his garden, and then the rope that he wove. It was really incredible. Although I guess the mallets were made out of rubber bands. I don't think he made those, but the wooden sticks,
Yep,
yes.
those were handmade. Are so I thought we got that part in the story. Did we take that part out?
No, we got that part. I just had a whole part about like how I arrived, and I like peeked, and I was scared, and then finally I had to sneak around to the back. But you were like, "No, get to the get to the."
You built that balafone, damn it. Yeah,
Those
that
things are really real, because he was I experienced him, and again, I was a young woman. I was maybe 23, so I was much less confident than I am now. um, and he was just kind of this very stoic, beautiful man, and older, and very well respected. So I just remember being like super scared, and I never really knew what to do, because he couldn't tell me, because I couldn't understand his language.
Mhm.
But we became friends. I think we became friends. He never said we were best friends.
It seemed
He
like it
smiled
makes
at me like once, and that was a really big deal.
sense. Yeah, that was a fun part about writing this story in particular because I remember at one point we sat down and we looked at all the different pieces and we were like, what is the theme? Like we got to find it. We got to find the theme. And that's like how we got to choose like the different scenes and cut because it's I mean it's so hard when you've got these like enough incredible experiences to write a whole book about it, like to even try to get it down to 10 or 20 pages. Like, what? Like, how do we do that? But I think ultimately, do you want to share what the underlying theme of your story was, or should we leave that as a surprise?
We can share that. And I had never worked. I've written, I've done writings. I love to write,
Mhm.
but I had never worked with an editor, and it was so challenging because my inclination is to be super like flowery and detailed, and sometimes that doesn't serve the best. So it was such a beautiful thing,
Mm.
frustrating and beautiful to moments where I was like, no, Megan. And she was like, you have to. And I was like, but I mean, I really have to say, I would recommend anyone who needs an editor. She's incredible. Incredible.
Mm.
Uh, but like the honing down process was super amazing to me and something that I don't know if I could have done myself. And
Mm.
really helpful because I like to create in this way. Like I kind of like to go like all over the place, and to have someone help me
Mm.
come to the crux was really helpful. So I think when we discovered, I can't remember what we were doing that kind of led to that, but that this idea of this like transformation of like kind of coming into my body in a different way and being able to express myself in a different way, that was the crux. It wasn't the relationships with the family. I mean, I think that was hard for me because I so desired and still desire to do to be so honoring of the particularly Deju's family, and the teachers that worked with me because um, I just think it's important to be honoring, and they gave me such a huge gift. So it was hard sometimes to not like spend a lot of time in that realm and
Mm.
keep it to what we were really trying to say with the story, which we realized was more, but was less about family relationships and more about the kind of personal transformation that I went through in um, developing my relationship with my body and with my dance, and in particular with the weight in my body.
Mm. Yeah,
It
there
was
was like a feeling of like gaining greater access to freedom, self-expression, and like all of these moments, all of these people were like so key to that. And like each, like what I think I really got about it is like each part of the story that you give, it's like this unlocks something, and this unlocks something, and this person gave me this gift, and this person gave me this gift. So it's just like it just feels like even though you were scared, you were just getting like constantly getting these loving nudges towards what ultimately happened.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I really, when I talk about Senegal, and again, like, is this a I don't know. It sounds cliche. But it's my lived experience. My lived experience is that I experienced generosity in Senegal that I had never experienced before in my life,
Mm.
and it was incredible. And not just in Seju, but I remember like so I traveled several times like on a bus, to the north and then back to the south through the Gambian border, which was a little bit scary. There were armed guards, they take your passport. And I remember, on the bus, if one person bought food, they would share it with everyone on the bus. So
Mm.
I would never buy food without, like, if you just bought food for yourself and just like kept it, that would be like really uncool. Like everyone shared with strangers on the bus. And there was one trip we made, and I think Alien wasn't with me, Deju wasn't with me. I went by myself, um, and I mean, I could write a whole story about traveling via bus in the 90s
Mm.
in Senegal, which is like you go, there are these guys who like yell into your taxi and they're like, where are you going? And you tell them, and then they're like, okay, go to this bus. And you're in this like football field filled with buses. And then you go to that bus And you're like, is this the right bus? And they're like, yep, it's the right bus. There's no signs or anything. And then you get on the bus, like I'm by myself, I'm like 22. And I get on the bus and I like sit there and then you just wait until the bus fills. There's no like schedule. You just wait. And again, like I feel like all of this, like it was just so much more improvisational than I had experienced. Like I was developing not only my dance improvisational skills, but my life improvisational skills, like
Yes.
moving away from like the perfectionistic idea of like what things need to be and just being with what is. And that it was really all good. You know, we would wait until the bus filled and then we would go. And pretty much every trip I went, the bus would break down. Everyone would go, they'd sit on the side of the road, everyone would share their food, and then another bus would come and pick us up. And I remember like being so surprised that I wasn't scared, you know, I felt actually really safe because there was a sense of like people make it work and they help each other.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
again, maybe this is like an idealistic version, but it was my experience. And it was really impactful for me to live in that way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I remember going across the Gambia border and they like took my passport and they kept it for a really long time. I remember these like ladies on the bus were like, "Where's your passport?" They're like, because I didn't, you know, I only spoke English and the officials would speak English, but not everyone would. And they like went to the office and were like, "Give her back her passport." Like they really advocated for me in this
Wow.
way that, you know, was incredible for a stranger, and especially like a white stranger traveling in their country, clearly a foreigner, clearly kind of didn't know what was going on, and that kind of generosity, and again, that kind of generous spirit was really incredible to be around.
Mm.
Um, you know, and there's lots of layers. There's lots of layers that we could go into around like colonialism and whiteness and traveling in Africa as a white person. But I what I want to say is that I feel so grateful to have experienced that, and it was a profound had a profound effect on my life.
Yeah. Well, I'm just noticing that we want to make sure to wrap up by 3 so you can get head off on your own adventures for today. Do you want to read us a little bit from your story?
Sure.
Yay.
Um, well, we talked about, and I'm actually at my parents' house, and so I have their copy.
Yay.
Um, we said maybe I should just read the first page.
Yeah.
And I actually wrote this section. I mean, Megan and I worked a lot on it, but I had written this before. I had been thinking about this idea right when I came back. The whole time that I was in Senegal, there was this kind of theme of this, or I was living with Deju. Um, it was the dry season, and we were waiting for the rain. And this idea of like waiting for the rain, waiting for something to come, seeing it and feeling it coming closer to you and closer to you and closer to you. And in the story, this becomes like a metaphor for this transformation that was happening
Mm.
for me. It began with the waiting, waiting for the rain. The cloud was just a smudge on the horizon when I first arrived at my host family's home in Seju, Senegal. It had grown steadily closer as the days went by, its eventual arrival as sure as my love for this newfound home, the weight of my breasts against my chest, and the abiding beat of my heart. This waiting was some of the sweetest time I've known. Sometimes we chatted, Pop and I. He would tease me in his quickly improving English, or I would shyly practice my French. Perched on the edge of the rickety wooden porch, the substantial curve of my hip pressed against his leanness, we sat. His legs swung freely, while mine stayed tucked underneath me, our fingers threaded lightly together, with our palms held apart to avoid the heat. Sometimes we drank this sweet, dark as the night sky in this rural village, that was traditionally served in 3 rounds. The first round was a bite on the tongue from the strong tannins in the fresh brew. Each round after was progressively tamer until we were simply sipping sugar water and giggling. Once in a while, my host sister Nene would silence us with a stern word. Taisez-vous, be quiet or you'll wake the little ones, she would say. Her voice sounded serious, but when I caught her eye, her face betrayed her. She could not help but smile at our delight. Sometimes Pop and I were the calm, watchful eye at the center of a whirlwind, as children and chickens kicked up clouds of dust that rose in spirals around us. We reveled in their antics and the simple joy of being alive and together in this place, 2 strangers from opposite sides of the world who were now like family. At other times, we sat in silence, simply watching the huge, ever changing cloud grow inexorably closer. It felt like years we had been waiting, sitting hand in hand in the dirt yard under the mango tree. By the end of my stay, the cloud was luminous and pink and very, very close, so close that it tinted the hot, humid air with a rosy glow. It loomed over us, and we had to lie on our backs in the dirt yard to take it all in. I lay in its shadow, my head resting comfortably against Pop's, my body released fully into the ground, and my breathing soft and shallow. Somehow, I was both perfectly content to be where I was and longing for the waiting to end.
So good. So good. I love it. Um, Miss Helen, is there anything that you want to leave our viewers with? Any words of wisdom? Any resources you want to share?
Um, hmm. Oh, wow. Here in Vermont, like it's like a sudden rainstorm and the sun is still out.
Maybe it's a sign for the wisdom
I
you
know.
want to share.
Get distracted.
Mhm.
Uh, I mean, my main message from this story is like just about like loving the vessel that you're given, um, and that we all um, are given these bodies to be in the world in the way that we want to be. And there are lots of messages that will tell you that your body isn't good enough, and that's bullshit. You know, you get to like be in your body and love your body and use your body to do the work that you want to do in the world.
Mm.
And that's a real gift, and that the differences in our bodies are gifts. And what I really found was the weight more in the story. Like I talk about how um, in ballet there's this sense of like pulling your weight up and kind of like hiding it, you know, and that has so many more implications around like clothing, like sucking your belly in, hiding your weight. Whereas like for me in the dance that I learned in Senegal, and then the dance that I developed, kind of I would not purport myself as an African dancer, but I use a lot of momentum and weight into the ground. And without the weight of my body, I would not be the dancer that I am. Like my dance is a gift from this body, this particular body that has like big hips and that has large breasts and that has like sturdy muscles. Like I'm able to do the things that I do and have this dance because of this body. And I really learned to love that and know that through my experience learning dance in Senegal and being supported by community in Senegal in my self-expression. So yeah, I just really want people to like spend their days loving their bodies and doing things that feel beautiful in their bodies rather than hating them. That's what I want.
Preach. Preach. Well, come read Helen's story in Dance Adventures. It's $2.99 the ebook just for today, December 1st. Otherwise, it's typically $9.99 for the ebook. And go check it out, read her story, send her an email with love and appreciation for her awesome advice and reflections from this interview and her story. And it's been so much fun to chat with you, Helen.
Thank you so much, Megan, and thank you so much for bringing this book into fruition. It's been such a pleasure to promote it and to really feel the just like this is a time when people really need some like inspiration and hope and joy, and all of these stories really share so much uh, about joy in the world and about connection, um, and I think we really need that right now. So it's been a pleasure to be kind of in that and thinking about that and sharing that. And it's really a labor of love for Megan, and I know that really.
For all of us, for sure. For sure. All right.